Okay, we're live. Sorry. There we go. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Christina Rosenbach, Chief Customer Officer here at Fullpath. I'm super excited to be joined by Betsy Marietti from Urban Science. Before we jump into the topic today, Betsy, would love for you to just quickly introduce yourself, maybe tell everyone a little bit about your role at Urban Science.
Great. Thank you, Christina. I'm Betsy Marietti. I'm a solution manager at Urban Science, and I'm in charge of bringing our direct-to-dealer solutions to market through just pilots and dealer enablement and strategy.
Amazing. All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining. Today, we're going to look at a problem that really every dealership has, but I would say few have visibility into, which is customer defection. Every dealership spends a tremendous amount of money generating leads, but not many have spent a ton of time trying to figure out what should happen after someone actually doesn't buy from them. Most stores just kind of assume the opportunity is gone. And I think today our goal is to challenge that assumption. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. We'll start by kind of discussing what Urban Science is seeing across the market as it relates to customer defection and how they're exposing that data to dealerships. Then we'll shift into the opportunity, which is how can dealers use that data to really rethink the way that they handle their role in the situation when they don't actually win the sale. From there, we'll walk through why a customer data platform can really be an important foundation for activating on those types of insights. And then we'll end with like a few real world examples, how this is playing out for a few Fullpath and Urban Science shared customers. And then we'll open things up for questions. So let's start by talking about the problem, and then I'm going to pass it over to Betsy. Before I do, I just want to say one of the biggest shifts that I've seen happening in automotive retail today is that dealerships actually have access to more customer data than ever before. Ironically, despite that, many still really lack visibility into one of the most important moments in the customer journey, which is when someone decides to purchase, if it doesn't happen within their four walls, right? So they can see it if it happens within their dealership, but they can't necessarily tell if that same shopper engaged with another dealership and ended up purchasing a vehicle. And without that visibility, dealerships continue treating those shoppers like active prospects. And that can really waste a lot of time and money. So that's why we invited Betsy here to talk with us today, because Urban Science has a super unique vantage point because they analyze shopping and purchase behavior across the entire industry. So they can see those trends on individual dealerships that individual dealerships just can't see on their own. So Betsy, I'd love to turn it over to you and maybe talk to us a little bit about what Urban Science is kind of seeing within this realm.
Great. Yeah, like you said, 74% of dealers actually lack visibility into when that lost lead is no longer in market and no longer shopping their store, which is costing them revenue opportunity. And really, what does a lost lead mean to a dealer? Are they using it as an opportunity in the future to continue to build a relationship? Do they even know that that customer is out of market, or they continue to waste dollars and marketing spend on them? And then when you do actually start to gain that visibility through daily defection insights, what are you doing with those daily defection insights? What we like to train our dealers with is that a lost lead isn't actually a negative thing. Like we said, you can turn it into a new revenue stream, which we'll explore later in this webinar via service opportunities and connecting your CDP for smarter, more efficient marketing. But you're able to also pivot into coaching opportunities. What necessarily went wrong in that buyer journey where they ultimately chose to purchase from somebody else and not your dealership? Now, we know that it's not always necessarily something that went wrong at your dealership. Like it could be a inventory issue or maybe not aligned on pricing. But we're piloting a tool right now called a defection survey, which is providing a voice to the defector. And what we're finding in that survey is a lot of the times customers are choosing an alternative dealership due to communication. And these types of insights can help with that communication. And then when you are creating automated processes and stopping marketing that is irrelevant, you're going to improve that communication, which ultimately improves the customer experience and the relationship that you're building with the consumers within your market. So we're going to dive into some best practices, like I said, on how you can actually take these lost leads and turn them into learning opportunities and then potential revenue streams to make you more efficient.
It's also so crazy to see the data on this slide. 74% of dealers are completely unsatisfied with defection visibility, but the
Mhm.
wealth of data actually available is pretty significant, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, we have more data than ever. Like in this slide right here, through our recent Harris Poll study, we're seeing that the buyer journey has changed, but dealerships aren't necessarily changing fast enough to meet those expectations. 44% of consumers spend more time researching before they even submit a lead to your dealership. So that's even before they give you a call, a text, or schedule that test drive, they're comparing you to other brands within the market. And we are seeing that on average, consumers are submitting about 2.5 to 3 leads to different dealerships, making it more competitive. In addition, we're finding that loyalty doesn't have as much of an impact as it did previously. With our defection data, we are able to see if the customer was previously dealership loyal and if they were previously brand loyal. And what we're finding is that more consumers, 31%, are prioritizing value over previous loyalty, meaning you have to make a really strong first impression. And when 75% of consumers are expecting a callback within a 24-hour period, you have to be very fast and very efficient in order to capture those customers. If they are no shopping around, no longer loyal, this might be the first impression that this customer has with your brand or even your dealership. And if your sales team is spending time calling leads who are no longer in market, they're not really prioritizing the experience of the ones that are in market. So if you're eliminating, like, first steps first, use defection data to eliminate the customers who are no longer in market. We know the customer is no longer in market as soon as the next day. So it's super fast, super timely. You can eliminate those from your sales team and BDC process follow-up, and then get them to spend more time providing the right information and the more personalized experience to the ones that are in market. So that really helps there if you're kind of taking a look at dealership execution, dealership experience. And then that's able to provide a better customer experience. And then for the ones who are no longer in market, you're able to kind of pivot those messages and potentially win back their loyalty in the future.
Amazing. There's really two key insights there. Number one, don't waste time on customers who are out of market. Number two, it's not just about wasting time and money. It's also about recognizing that customer relationships don't end when a vehicle purchase happens. They just sort of enter into a different phase. So I think to your point, like, if a dealer has this type of data, this type of visibility, it's much easier for them to kind of move that customer into the next phase of what their customer experience could look like.
Yes, 100%.
Amazing.
And I want to talk about just a personal experience and a personal story that I went through in my own car buying journey, just to kind of cement the story and the importance of this. I went to a dealer in my market for a test drive, was communicating with them, and the experience wasn't what I would like as somebody who works in the automotive industry. I was a little bit frustrated with this dealer. So I ended up going 35 miles away to the same brand and purchasing. That was about 6 months ago. And now I'm getting my service messaging from the dealer I purchased with. However, the dealership that I had the poor experience with is only about 5 to 10 minutes away from my house, and they have a pretty good service bay. And I would have been willing to actually bring my car over there as opposed to the dealer I purchased from because it's much closer and more convenient. However, about a month ago, they texted me asking if I was still interested in the vehicle that I was trying to purchase from them originally, which just frustrated me because, like, I purchased 5 months ago. Like, that ship has sailed. You sent me a service coupon, I absolutely would have come back. So that's just kind of a preview and like a personal story to show you, like, it's frustrating when your customers are getting irrelevant messaging, and it completely turned me off to this large dealer group in our area.
I think that's such a key insight. I think, like, as we think about the opportunity there, it's how can we help our industry move from how can I recover this sale, or even like keep reaching out to this sale who is not a potential in-market shopper anymore, to, okay, I know a lot more about this customer. I can see their full customer journey. And now how do I continue earning their business in different ways? And to me, that's the opportunity, right? Because regardless of where a customer purchased, that customer now owns a vehicle. They're going to need service. They'll eventually shop again. And every interaction between now and that next shopping experience is an opportunity for a dealership to really influence what comes next. So your personal story is, I think, an exact example of that. And I know for me personally, a service on my vehicle is always going to win to the dealership that one, has the best customer experience, and two, is the most convenient to my house. That doesn't necessarily tie me to where I'm buying a vehicle. And that's sort of the mindset shift we need to continue to make.
Yes, 100%.
All right. This is also a good example of when a customer data platform can really become foundational for a dealer. Why? Because a CDP is not just another database. It's truly the system that creates a persistent understanding of each customer by combining the DMS activity, website engagement, purchase signals, service history, marketing interactions, all into that single customer profile. And that unified view really allows dealerships to stop reacting to isolated events like the ones that we just described, and instead start managing an ongoing customer relationship. And what we've learned in our partnership with Urban Science is that if you integrate their defection data into the CDP, it can really help dealers move away from just thinking about lost leads and more towards deferred relationships, because that relationship is still there. It just really requires a different conversation. So that brings us to the question, how can a dealer operationalize all of this? If Urban Science has the defection data and you're a dealer and you have a CDP, Fullpath obviously being one of them, how can you kind of merge those worlds so you get the insights and the data from Urban Science, and then can in real time merge it into how you're tracking your customers and do something with it? And I will say that's why Urban Science and Fullpath have come together. But I actually want to bring us back a little bit because this journey of kind of investigating this like critical moment in the shopper journey and figuring out how we activate around it all actually came back from a mutual customer, which is Joe Brown at Frank Lita. And Joe came to us and said, I have this incredibly valuable data from Urban Science. Today, I'm like uploading it in my CRM. It's not real time. I have a customer data platform, but those systems aren't connected. So this important customer data is just not doing what I want it to do with your Fullpath CDP. So we partnered with Joe together, and the goal was to kind of bring that defection signal and help it flow automatically into the CDP. And the goal was to help the dealer really immediately adjust their customer experience in real time. For every dealer, that can look really different. But in the case of Joe, it meant shifting into service education, ensuring that we're changing the audiences in real time where they're spending marketing dollars, and make sure all of it happens automatically, right? So like the process of uploading spreadsheets needed to go away. So that's kind of how we set out on this partnership. And now there are really good options for dealers. So one, it was such a compelling use case. So shout out to Joe that it's now expanded beyond a single customer. Any mutual Fullpath and Urban Science customer can take advantage of our integration that exists between our companies. And how it works is essentially Urban Science is continuously identifying when shoppers purchase vehicles across the market. That data lives in an API. We created an API connection with the data. So those purchase signals now become another attribute within the Fullpath CDP. And once the CDP understands that, then as soon as the customer is no longer shopping, it can immediately orchestrate a different experience. So instead of continuing vehicle offers as just one example, the dealership begins building that next chapter of the relationship. Betsy, maybe for a second before I even move on, do you want to talk a little bit about how Urban Science even identifies those purchase signals, and kind of like what does the real-time visibility look like in your API?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christina, for passing it back for a second. So we have a long history of being in the automotive industry, just celebrated 50 years. And because of those long-standing history and relationships, we have partnerships with every OEM across the American market. So we get 96% of new vehicle car sales data on a nightly basis. And then when we partner or match up against a dealership CRM, we're able to create a match to that customer through our best-in-class householding opportunities within our data hub. So we're able to let you know the next day that your customer is no longer in market because of that rich history and sales data that we have access to. So we're able to, depending on the CRM, pass back notes, reminders, touch points, and then even auto close a lead for some of them, which provides you daily visibility into where your leads are within the market and within the purchase journey. And then you can then take it a step further and activate it with your CDP through those API integrations.
Amazing. So going back to how this works, I think, one thing that's really important to Fullpath, just as like a table stakes for how we work with our dealers, is that we never want technology to create more work. Instead, we want it to quietly remove work. And that's really how we built this integration. So once the data is in the CDP, all a dealer has to do is apply filters within our CDP that become instantly available to them. And then it's super simple. They can set up and define the experience from there. So they can decide, what should the sequencing of messaging look like after a client has defected? How should that customer move between audiences? After it's set up, no one has to remember to stop campaigns. No one has to manually update CRM fields, and no one has to wonder whether marketing dollars are still being spent on customers who have purchased elsewhere, because our platform is going to automatically suppress those from in-market campaigns. Realistically, the CDP understands the customer's new life cycle stage in this moment. And then again, it's always going to just adjust that engagement automatically. I want to look at a couple of use cases together because I think just bringing this to life is helpful. Betsy's example was a personal example, which we see a lot actually in our CDP. Imagine a customer submits a lead, they begin engaging with the dealership. Under a traditional approach within our CDP or really any marketing platform that you're using, the sales process is going to continue until someone manually updates a record in a CRM. If we're being honest, that sometimes never even happens.
Right, because you have to wait for the customer to tell you that they're either they have to text you back or call you and say, hey, I'm not in market anymore, and then your salesperson has to then go take that step too, right? So
that's exactly
creating the automation is so important there.
Even if a person tells a salesperson in a dealership, it doesn't necessarily mean that the record gets updated. And I think that's the key piece we always talk about when it comes to like the quality of data. Sometimes the quality of data is only as good as what you're putting into it. I think the benefit of the urban science data is it's almost like an enrichment layer to whatever your first party data already says. You're enriching your records and you just don't have to rely on a human actually changing that record in real time. Anyway, like the goal of this is, again, like once that record is changed, move that customer into service messaging quickly. And I want to share an example of how it played out. This is an actual customer pulled from a dealership record within their CDP. Obviously, we changed the name for privacy purposes. So today we're just going to call him Jim. In this scenario, Jim submitted a lead into the dealership. So again, I think it relates really well back to Betsy's personal example. They submitted the lead, but they didn't ultimately buy from that dealer. So whatever the case may be, they found a better value somewhere else. Very quickly, you can see the defection between the lead and then the defection data streaming in from Urban Science. From there, the CDP in real time adjusted the messaging to service content. And in this customer example, it was a really great moment where a few months later, so from June into September, Jim, the customer, opened a service email and then booked a service appointment. So again, original sale lost, but that's okay because the objective shifted from winning that transaction to preserving the relationship. And the dealership actually did, in this case, preserve that relationship. This is just another example, and it's similar, but this one happened a little bit closer together. So customer looked like an ideal prospect, didn't necessarily submit a lead, but had multiple website visits, really strong engagement. We marked them in our CDP with really high purchase intent. In this case, again, customer purchase elsewhere. We got that data from Urban Science. And then again, the CDP automatically adjusted our experience. In this situation, it didn't take a few months. It was only 18 days later that customer then engaged with service. So again, takeaway is that every lost buyer has an option or potential to become a service customer. And
it's about hitting them at the right time with the right message and using the data that you have at your disposal. Like Christina said early on, you have so much data, so it's so rich right now within the automotive industry, and it's how you activate it in a really smart and thoughtful way to provide those customer experience to win them back. So right message at the right time. 18 days later for one customer, 4 months later for another customer, 6 months for me. Like it's just, you have to know when people are ready for that service opportunity or in the market. And that's what the CDP is able to do for your team through those really smart interpretation of those signals and then those automated workflows.
I totally agree. Our CRO, Mike Colaccio, always says that data is only a 4-letter word if you can't do anything with it. So this is a great example of the data exists, take it out of silos and actually put it to work. And I think these results that Urban Science actually shared with us for this webinar really reinforce why this strategy matters, because service is not an operational function only in your dealership. It is one of the strongest drivers of long-term customer lifetime value. So Betsy, talk a little bit about these benchmarks on this slide and kind of what they should mean to our audience.
Yeah. So one, you get the service opportunity and the service revenue from there. And then you have the ability to translate that into the parts revenue further down the stream. But what we find more oftentimes than not is service should be one of your key drivers of leads within for your sales team for new car sales leads. And 11% of your service customers have a higher repurchase rate than, just a customer that submits a lead form on your website. So they're highly likely to buy if you're providing them a strong and positive service experience. And then 48% of your active service customers do return to purchase at your dealership. So again, it's about providing a good customer experience in your service bay. Start winning them back. Customers need oil changes about every 6 months. So that you get them in the one time, you have a great experience, then they're going to keep coming back to you every time thereafter. And when they do re-enter the market 3 to 5 years later, then they're going to be thinking of you top of mind.
Amazing. So let's wrap it up with some actions dealerships can take right now. First one is super easy. The defection data exists. If you're not using some form of defection data, you should be. Gain access to it, build it into your process. There are a lot of different ways to do that. The CDP is one of them. I would say second, once you have that data, find ways to automate it. Don't force your team to be flipping through a million different spreadsheets and systems and trying to figure out the best way to reach out to their customers. There are so many technology platforms now that can make this easier for you. So find the right technology partner that can bring your data together, take it out of silos, and build one view of the shopper. That one view will really revolutionize not just the way you use this data, but the way you use any of your data. And then third, if you have a defected customer, that lead isn't dead, it's just different. So find ways to relate to it differently, maintain a service relationship, and just in general, don't measure your business by leads. I think anytime you're focusing on true customer lifetime value, at least for us, those are our customers who are winning right now. The ones that are focused on the customer end to end and winning in all different moments of the journey. And I think this is a really great example of ways you can do that. So Betsy, I want to ask you, if a dealership wants to get started today with Urban Science defection data, how do they do it? What does that look like?
Yeah, we've made it really easy. That's the good news, right? So if you're not a current Urban Science customer, there's a couple of different ways that you can gain access. Through our website, we actually have live demos of both of our dealer solutions, Sales Alert and Traffic View. So you can explore exactly what that dashboard looks like and that system and kind of the value and the insights that you could get if you were to enroll and sign up for both Sales Alert and Traffic View. So in order to get the CDP API integration, you do have to be a Sales Alert and Traffic View customer to activate that. But the good news is there's so much you can do with those defection signals. So we didn't necessarily get into too many of the data, but you can create really specific campaigns because we know if that customer was within your within your PMA, and then if they were previously loyal, and then so we can pass those signals back into the CDP and make them more actionable for you. And then we can drill down by source too, and then get into days to sale when specific sources are purchasing. So you can really make really strong automated workflows through those CDPs. So you just have to sign up. You can sign up through our website. We also have contact forms. You can contact us directly if you want to have a personalized demo from our sales team.
Amazing. So we already have some questions coming in, and I'll ask the first one, which is, what changes the most in daily workflows? I can speak to this from the Fullpath side, and then Betsy, maybe you can speak about it more broadly as it relates to Urban Science and kind of how you guys advise clients to use this data. First, on the Fullpath side, if a dealer wants to do this, meaning you already work with Urban Science or you're planning to work with Urban Science and you want to connect this data into your CDP, the first thing you have to do is connect with your CSM, because obviously we need permission to connect the data sources. So that's step one. Once you give us that permission, give Urban Science the permission to share it with us, The connection is very simple to activate. And then as it relates to like daily workflows in your CDP, there's a couple of things. One, the defection data is already going to show up in the timeline, the shopper timeline within the CDP. So you're going to start seeing that data in real time. You'll see a defection within their timeline, just like you do all the rest of their marketing activity. The other thing is we make it really easy because a bunch of filters will appear for you. So once the data is connected, you'll see the option to create campaigns and campaign sequences using the Urban Science defection data. And that's when you can use those filters to set up the campaigns and like what you want to have happen once those shoppers are in your CDP and that data is in your CDP. Also, once they hit our database, so once you activate the integration, automatically they're suppressed from in-market sale campaigns. So that doesn't take any work. There is a little bit of work with setting up the custom campaign sequence, but that's because we want to make sure that your dealership is setting it up in the way that you want to be talking to your customers. Betsy, how about more broadly? Like if a dealer has defection data, what do you recommend that they change in their daily workflows with how they're using it?
Yeah, we've seen that there's an immense amount of value when you start incorporating defection insights into your day to day. So it's all about the more that you actually use it and interact with it, the more value you're going to get out of it. After a 6-month period, we're seeing about 6 incremental sales a month for dealers who are logging in frequently and checking it. And this just becomes, like you said, one, the automation. Make sure that your tech stacks are connected. So we're able to kind of auto mark those leads within the dealer CRM, taking them out of your sales team follow up. So that's basic. That's like the rinse and repeat basic thing that you should be doing. And then taking it a step further and embedding that into your one-on-ones with your sales team so that you're looking at them as coaching opportunities, looking within your systems. Okay, what was the follow-up that happened for this specific customer and what could we learn from that? Did we miss a follow-up? Did they come in as a truck owner but requested a sedan and we only showed them sedans and then we found out that they later purchased a truck? Like it's types of those insights and applying those insights that kind of become the crux of how you can kind of learn, make a stronger sales team and a more efficient sales team and find value.
Awesome. We have a comment here that says loyalty profit lives in the service lane. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think the data definitely reflects that. I also want to ask, so there's one more question that came in, which is what happens if customer data is incomplete or mismatched? I'll start by saying Urban Science is providing us daily defection data. So on the Fullpath end, your shoppers are updated every single day in your CDP. If a shopper has defected, that data is going to appear in those shopper profiles. It's super easy to track. I think from a Urban Science perspective, maybe tell the audience, like, how do you guys focus on accuracy with this data? How do they know how to best rely on it?
Yeah, we pride ourselves on the quality of our data at Urban Science. It's what we're known for. And it's because we're able to create such robust householding and match keys within our platform that we're able to take that customer record that you're providing and match it against the data sources that we're getting, which are directly from the RDRs on a nightly basis in the OEM. So it's like we're able to just create that 96% accuracy or sales match accuracy.
Amazing. All right, so we are at time. I did want to include just this last slide because there's an awesome opportunity to download the 2026 Urban Science Harris Poll Survey. Do you want to quickly share a little bit about that, and then we can wrap up and say goodbye?
Yeah. So some of the stats that you saw throughout this presentation actually come from our annual Harris Poll study, which is conducted every year through the Harris Poll. And then we survey both consumers and dealerships on key industry topics. So there's a lot of really interesting, relevant pieces in there. It's a great piece just to read over with some coffee, but go ahead and download it. There's some great stuff in there around AI, how dealers are using it, what consumers think about it, whether or not dealerships and consumers are aligned on the buying process and buying journey, how consumers and dealerships are looking at service, optimizing the dealership for the future, et cetera. So there's a lot of really great statistics and stats in there. We love producing this every year.
Amazing. All right, Betsy, thanks so much for spending the time with us today. Thanks to everyone who joined. Great stuff happening here, and we really appreciate our partnership with Urban Science. So thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.